Now, notice something else here that we learn in the 9th verse of John chapter 4. So the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, despite being a Jew, ask me for a drink, even though I am a Samaritan woman?" And then we learn more here with parentheses, for Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. And it went both ways. That's the way the prejudice was, no dealings. And on top of that, she's a woman. And women were not treated very nice during that period in man's history.
And doesn't it show in what the Apostle Paul said about women at 1 Corinthians 14, verse 34? "Let the women keep silent in the congregations, for it is not permitted for them to speak. Rather let them be in subjection, as the law also says. If they want to learn something, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is disgraceful for a woman to speak in the congregation." Anyway, carry on, Tony.
So she's a Samaritan, she's a woman, and Jesus asks her for a drink, starts a conversation with her. Now, these are the things we learn with this. He didn't make any assumptions about her, and obviously knew she was a woman and a Samaritan traveling through Samaria at that time. And he didn't refuse to speak to her because of that. So the lesson for us there is, don't judge people by what you see, based on their culture, the color of their skin. This world is filled with judges. We're Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't do that. We leave the judging to Jehovah and Jesus Christ, and don't judge whether you think they'll converse with you. That's wrong. Jesus didn't do that, and he set that perfect example for us. Go ahead, and then if you're a little nervous about it, then we beg Jehovah for his Spirit to help us, to give us the courage to witness about his beautiful name and purposes.
Well, this is interesting. Tony Morris, Anthony Morris III, governing body member, arguably the most judgmental governing body member, is now all about not being judgmental.
Don't judge people by what you see. This world is filled with judges. We're Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't do that. We leave the judging to Jehovah and Jesus Christ.
We leave the judging to Jehovah and Jesus Christ. This again, Anthony Morris speaking at the 2022 Pursue Peace Convention. His symposium theme, "Be ready to share the good news of peace, take the initiative." It's interesting that Tony Morris is so anxious to get across this message of not being judgmental. It's not the first time he's done this. He actually did it 2 years ago at the 2020 Always Rejoice Convention.
Moreover, stop judging, and you will by no means be judged. And stop condemning, and you'll by no means be condemned. Keep on forgiving, and you will be forgiven. So, very priceless counsel on the need to be forgiving. Jehovah and Jesus certainly are. He also, you'll notice in verse 37, stated, stop judging. Just stop it. He didn't say don't judge. He said stop judging. Why? Because that's imperfect human inclination to judge others. Sometimes, even in the congregation, some can become overly critical. They can become resentful, envious. See? And envy is so destructive. Somebody might have materialistic prosperity. They might enjoy privileges that you don't have in the congregation. Others might find them very endearing, and so envy can creep in. And frankly, It's unhealthy physically and spiritually.
So Jehovah's Witnesses shouldn't be overly critical in the congregation, and they shouldn't judge people by what they see. They shouldn't be judging people based on their appearance. Here is a 4-minute, 15-second montage of Tony Morris not being judgmental about others in the congregation, and not being judgmental about people's appearance.
Only God, as he looks at your hands in here and all those that are tied in, does he see blood there? The humans sitting next to you, they might have an idea because they know you well and you haven't been out in service in weeks. Well, guess what? Most likely God's seeing some blood all over your hands. Or they go totally inactive and we appeal to them, we try to help, but you cannot water down what God says here. If your hands are not clean because you've been out warning, then they have blood on them and you're gonna lose your life.
You know, a man that's not serving, there should be a real good reason why they're not serving as a ministerial servant. Remember, sister, you know how elders get put in awkward positions. What's the story with this brother? I'm interested in marrying him, but they had already gone too far along. But I tried to tell her, I said, well, think about it. He's 23 years old. He's not a ministerial servant. She married him. She paid for that wrong decision. 23 years old and you're not serving as a ministerial servant?
So I thought this would be a nice memory aid to this verse stay in the mind. Here's what Jehovah's promising. Okay. That's Jehovah's enemies. They're going to vanish like smoke.
I have to mention this, something I've observed. I see it in the airports, but burly women, okay, this is what they do. And it's all jerry-rigging, but sometimes even some of our sisters now, and I suppose, and they're probably really lovers of God and such, but you're not thinking of this verse. And what it is this Spanx, this skin-tight stuff they wear. Now, are any sisters wearing it in the ministry? No. I can't say I've ever seen that. But when they exercise, they leave their home and they're jogging in this stuff. Look at the verse. Is that appropriate? To wear skin-tight Spanx or whatever they call it, that's not modest, and it's certainly not sound of mind. It's really not appropriate. There's nothing else to say about it. Now, you want to be in your home or your room and wear that stuff, that's your business. But don't go out in public like that and say you worship the true God. I'm just trying to stay in shape. Inappropriate.
Elders in congregations that are in close proximity to universities are well aware of the repeated scenario of parents coming to the Kingdom Hall with a child that they're dropping off to attend the nearby university. Sadly, often in a few weeks or months, the child begins missing meetings. And not too long into the school year, he totally disappears. Then the parents are upset with the local body of elders for not shepherding their child. My question is, who dropped them off at the university? So where does the responsibility really lie?
But like I've been telling others, and this is a fact, the homosexuals that are designing these clothes, they like you in tight pants. That's who likes it, not spiritual people. So there's something to consider with dressing and grooming. Is it appropriate? Is it modest? Does it display soundness of mind? If not, do something about it. If you're a spiritual family.
So that was 4 minutes, 15 seconds of Tony Morris giving his hot takes on a variety of issues, I'm sure we can just objectively agree that what we've just seen is a flood of judgmentalism over a period of years. He has an established track record of ranting about things that he doesn't like. And interestingly, just one of those clips out of the whole montage was aimed at worldly people or those whom Tony perceives as enemies of God, which I suppose would include apostates like me. He can't wait to see them vanish like smoke. All of the other clips, however, were criticisms aimed at Jehovah's Witnesses, telling Jehovah's Witnesses what not to wear, scorning Jehovah's Witness parents who allow their children to attend university, shaming Jehovah's Witness women who marry men who are over the age of 23 who aren't yet ministerial servants, and by the same token, shaming men who are over the age of 23 and aren't yet ministerial servants, and even threatening with death Jehovah's Witnesses who haven't engaged in the preaching work for weeks. This is Anthony Morris not being judgmental. If that's him not being judgmental, I shudder to think what judgmental Tony Morris would look and sound like. Blatantly, Tony Morris's words at this year's convention and the 2020 convention were utter hypocrisy. This man has no room to speak when it comes to judgmentalism and telling Jehovah's Witnesses not to judge others based on their appearance and so forth. In my rebuttal to the 2020 Always Rejoice convention, I speculated that maybe Tony Morris was being kind of humiliated by the rest of the governing body by being forced to give a talk on not being judgmental, maybe due to Bottlegates and various other things. They felt that he needed to set the record straight and take one for the team by essentially negating much of what he's been saying in his talks over the years with this new line about not being judgmental. I'm actually changing my mind. I think now we've seen it a couple of times. Now he's talking about it again, bearing in mind Tony Morris is on the teaching committee, so he has at least some say in which talks he gives and which material he goes through. I'm sure he would have the freedom, if he was suggested to give a talk that he didn't like or that he didn't feel comfortable giving, I'm sure he'd have the freedom to give a different talk. I'm sure governing body members will have that privilege when it comes to the material they deliver. I think he is deliberately repeating this don't be judgmental message because he realizes that he has this reputation for being extremely judgmental. This is, as far as I'm concerned, a PR exercise on his behalf. He knows he has a bad image, and rather than doing the decent thing, rather than doing the humble thing, because apparently the governing body are all about being humble, aren't they? Rather than doing the humble thing and just simply apologizing for some of the hateful, judgmental, vitriolic rhetoric he's been spewing over the last few years, he's simply telling others to stop being judgmental. And that's not an apology. That's just being a hypocrite.